top 7 countries where the relocation window is still open for now. The world didn't suddenly close its doors, it narrowed the doorway. And most people didn't notice until it was already happening. In this video, we break down where relocation is still possible in 2026, at a time when rules are tightening, requirements are rising, and governments are quietly shifting from welcoming newcomers to filtering them out. On paper, many places still look open. In reality, the margin for error is shrinking fast. This isn't about dream destinations or hype. It's about timing, access, and understanding how the rules are changing before they change again. We'll walk through the types of countries that are still allowing legal entry, long stays, and residency pathways, and explain why these doors haven't closed yet, while others already have. If you're thinking about moving abroad, retiring overseas, or keeping your options open in an uncertain world, this is information you don't want to get late. Watch closely. The window hasn't closed, but it's no longer wide open. If this kind of global insight helps you think ahead, hit like, subscribe to Mr. Globe TV, and share this video with someone who needs to see it before the rules change again. Number 7. Georgia. While many countries have turned relocation into a maze of income proofs, waiting periods, and quiet rejections, Georgia still operates with a rare sense of practicality. If you're allowed in, you're allowed to stay. At least for now. For many nationalities, the headline feature is hard to ignore. A full 1-year visa-free stay. Not 90 days. Not reset your exit clock. A clean, uninterrupted year. No income requirement, just to exist legally. No upfront pressure to justify your presence with bank statements or contracts. You arrive, you settle, you figure things out. In today's migration climate, that alone feels almost rebellious. The tax structure reinforces this openness. Georgia runs on a territorial tax system, which means foreign-sourced income is generally not taxed locally. Translation: money earned elsewhere doesn't automatically become the government's business. For remote workers and location-independent earners, this creates breathing room, the kind that lets people plan instead of panic. Pair that with straightforward rules and light enforcement, and you get a system that feels more like a handshake than a trapdoor. But let's not confuse still open with untouched. The word is out. Remote workers have been arriving in steady waves, drawn by low costs, decent infrastructure, and a capital city that punches above its weight culturally. Tbilisi rents have been creeping upward, not exploding, but nudging, the early sign of attention accumulating. Cafes fill faster, neighborhoods rebrand quicker, and landlords start doing the math. At the same time, Georgia's position near the EU means regulators are watching more closely. Not aggressively, yet, but attentively. Alignment conversations bring scrutiny, and scrutiny eventually brings structure. The rules haven't tightened, but the spotlight is warmer than it used to be. Georgia is open by design, not desperation. Welcoming, but not naive. The kind of place where the door is still unlocked, just no longer invisible. Number 6. Mexico. Mexico stays on this list because it still understands something many countries have forgotten. Relocation works best when it's practical, not performative. While others drown newcomers in forms and fine print, Mexico continues to offer temporary and permanent residency pathways that are real, functional, and, crucially, reachable. Not effortless, but reasonable. The door is still open to people who come prepared, not pre-approved by a billionaire's accountant. Part of Mexico's staying power is its infrastructure. This isn't a figure-it-out-as-you-go country. Healthcare is strong, affordable, and widely accessible, with private hospitals in major cities that rival those in far more expensive countries. Roads work, internet works, daily life works. That reliability matters more than beach views once the novelty wears off. And for North Americans, there's a cultural familiarity that lowers friction. Shared time zones, recognizable food labels, and a rhythm of life that doesn't feel like starting over from zero. Another quiet advantage: there's been no digital nomad crackdown, no sudden reclassification of remote workers as problems to be solved. Mexico hasn't rushed to build databases or roll out automated enforcement aimed at foreigners who keep to themselves and follow the rules. The system still runs on paperwork and process, not algorithms hunting for technicalities. But Mexico's openness isn't frozen in time. It's evolving. Financial requirements for residency have been rising quietly, not announced with sirens, but adjusted just enough to change who qualifies. What worked a few years ago may now require more income, more savings, or more documentation. The bar hasn't jumped overnight, but it has definitely lifted. Housing tells a similar story. Popular cities are tightening, especially in neighborhoods that became expat favorites. Rent hasn't spiraled everywhere, but competition is sharper, availability thinner, and patience more necessary. You can still live well, but you may not get first choice anymore. And perhaps the biggest shift, enforcement is becoming consistent. Not harsh, not hostile, just predictable. Renewals matter, deadlines matter, assumptions don't. Mexico isn't cracking down. It's growing up administratively. Mexico is still welcoming, still livable, still human, but no longer casual. The window remains open, but it now rewards people who move with intention, not impulse. Number 5. Colombia. Colombia is still operating in a rare middle ground, open enough to welcome newcomers, but structured enough to feel intentional. In a global landscape where relocation policies swing between chaos and clampdown, Colombia has chosen something more strategic, multiple doors instead of one fragile entrance. Right now, there are still several viable visa pathways. Migrant visas, digital nomad options, and longer-term residence routes coexist, giving people flexibility instead of forcing everyone into the same bureaucratic bottleneck. That variety matters. It allows retirees, remote workers, and long-stay residents to enter the system without pretending to be something they're not. Few countries still allow that kind of honesty. Cost of living plays a major supporting role, with a caveat. Outside the headline cities, Colombia remains genuinely affordable. Housing, food, and services are still priced for local incomes, not global wallets. Life feels balanced instead of negotiated. The trick is geography. Those who venture beyond the most publicized neighborhoods often find stability without sticker shock. What makes Colombia especially interesting is intent. The government has been openly courting foreigners, not quietly tolerating them. New programs, clearer residency structures, and public messaging all point in the same direction. Population inflow is viewed as an asset, not a liability. Add in long grace periods before enforcement, and you get a system that gives people time to adjust instead of penalizing them for not mastering the rules on day one. But the openness isn't frictionless anymore. New visa rules have added layers, not freedom. More categories mean more paperwork, more documentation, and more opportunities to get stuck between definitions. Flexibility still exists. It just comes with fine print. Medellin's popularity accelerated this shift. The spotlight brought scrutiny, and scrutiny brings oversight. What was once overlooked is now reviewed. What used to slide now needs explanation. It's not hostility, it's visibility. And then there's income. Proof of income requirements are expanding, quietly but steadily. Thresholds rise, documentation tightens, and assumptions disappear. Colombia still welcomes newcomers, but increasingly on paper, not vibes. Colombia hasn't closed the door. It's just added a receptionist. The window remains open, but it now favors those who arrive prepared, informed, and aware that generosity once noticed rarely stays casual forever. Number 4. Albania. Albania is on this list for one simple reason. It's still operating under the old rules while the rest of Europe is busy rewriting theirs. In a region where visas come with timelines, thresholds, and fine print stacked like a legal thriller, Albania quietly offers something almost unbelievable by modern standards. Americans can stay for a full year, visa-free. No extensions, no border runs, no awkward explanations. You arrive, you live, and the clock doesn't start yelling at you after 90 days. That openness extends beyond entry. There's no immediate residency paperwork pressure hovering over your shoulder. You're not forced into filing decisions before you figured out where the grocery store is or how the buses actually work. Albania gives people time, a concept that's becoming rare in global relocation. The system assumes you're a human adjusting to a new place, not a compliance risk waiting to be flagged. Then there's the lifestyle math. Low cost of living paired with Mediterranean access still works here, and it works honestly. This isn't a coastal fantasy priced for influencers. Housing, food, and everyday expenses remain grounded, especially outside the most obvious seaside pockets. You get sun, sea, and walkable cities without your budget feeling like it's on life support. Another underappreciated factor: minimal digital surveillance. Albania hasn't rushed to automate migration enforcement or integrate every movement into a centralized system. Processes are still human scale. Paper exists, conversations happen. That doesn't mean no rules, it means fewer invisible tripwires. But Albania isn't frozen in time. Foreign property interest is rising, and with it comes attention. Coastal areas and capital-adjacent neighborhoods are seeing more outside money, which always changes the conversation. Prices respond, expectations shift, locals notice. At the same time, EU alignment is inevitable, and alignment brings structure. Stricter rules aren't here yet, but the direction is clear. Integration requires standardization, and standardization rarely favors casual long stays. Finally, there's infrastructure. It's playing catch-up, not failing, just racing demand. Roads improve, services expand, systems modernize. Growth is happening faster than polish. Albania is open because it hasn't been fully folded into the new European operating system yet. The door is unlocked, the lights are on, and no one's rushing you, but you can already hear the hinges being oiled. Number 3. Portugal. Portugal makes this list not because it's easy, but because it's still possible, and in today's relocation climate, that distinction matters. This is a country that has clearly moved out of the open-door experiment phase and into something more deliberate. The door isn't wide anymore, but it hasn't slammed shut either. Legal residency is still achievable, and that's the key phrase. Not automatic, not casual. Achievable, if you qualify. Portugal continues to offer clear, lawful pathways for people who come prepared, follow the process, and meet the requirements. There's structure here, not chaos. And for many movers, that predictability is worth far more than flexibility that disappears overnight. Portugal's appeal hasn't faded because the fundamentals still work. Healthcare remains strong, affordable, and accessible, with public and private systems that function without drama. Safety is consistently high, daily life feels orderly, and institutions generally do what they say they'll do. That kind of stability is hard to overstate once you've lived somewhere that treats uncertainty like a feature. Governance plays a quiet but important role. Portugal doesn't lurch from policy to policy. Changes happen through debate, legislation, and timelines, not surprise announcements. That steadiness creates confidence, especially for long-term planners who value knowing the rules before they commit. But let's be clear, the window here is narrowing faster than almost anywhere else on this list. The scaling back of the Golden Visa sent a clear message. Portugal is no longer selling access as a product. Housing pressure, particularly in Lisbon and Porto, has turned relocation into a political issue, not just an economic one. When locals feel squeezed, governments respond. As a result, higher income thresholds are becoming the norm, not the exception. What qualified someone a few years ago may no longer be enough. Documentation is tighter, scrutiny is normal, expectations are higher. Portugal hasn't stopped welcoming newcomers. It simply stopped forgiving unprepared ones. That's the shift. It still offers safety, healthcare, legality, and stability. But now, it asks for commitment in return. That's why Portugal belongs here. The window is still open, but it's no longer a breeze. It's a measured step taken by people who understand that in 2026, access isn't about luck. It's about readiness. Number 2, Malaysia. While much of the world has turned relocation into a short-term experiment with an expiration date, Malaysia continues to operate on a long-stay mindset, even as it tightens the filters. At the center of that openness are MM2H-style residency options. These programs weren't built for quick flippers or trend chasers. They were designed for people who want to settle, integrate, and stay a while. The structure is clear, the intent is long-term, and the expectation is stability. It's not a free pass, but it's a real one, and that already puts Malaysia ahead of many peers. Daily life here helps explain why the country remains attractive. Infrastructure is solid and predictable. Modern roads, reliable internet, efficient airports, and cities that function without constant improvisation. Healthcare is another standout. Private hospitals offer high-quality care at costs that still surprise newcomers, in a good way. This isn't survival mode living. It's comfortable, functional, and well-organized. Language plays a quiet but powerful role. English is widely spoken, especially in urban areas, business settings, and healthcare. That lowers friction immediately. You can ask questions, read contracts, and navigate systems without feeling like every task is a translation exercise. Combined with a culture that's accustomed to foreigners staying long-term, Malaysia feels less like a temporary stop and more like a place that expects you to unpack. That said, the tone is changing. Financial thresholds are higher than they used to be, and the difference is noticeable. What once felt accessible now requires more planning, more proof, and more margin. The programs still exist, but they expect commitment backed by numbers. Adding to that uncertainty, rules can change with little warning. Adjustments aren't always gradual or heavily publicized. You're expected to keep up, stay compliant, and adapt quickly. This isn't hostility, it's selectivity. And that's the real shift, a quiet move toward quality over quantity migrants. Malaysia isn't closing the door, it's narrowing it, choosing stability, contribution, and long-term intent over volume. Number 1. Paraguay. Paraguay sits at the quiet end of the relocation conversation, and that's exactly why it still works. While louder destinations compete for attention with glossy programs and ever-changing rules, Paraguay has remained almost stubbornly low profile. The result is one of the easiest residency processes still left on the board, built less like a fortress and more like a front desk that actually answers your questions. The appeal starts with simplicity. Income requirements are low, refreshingly so, and framed around basic sustainability rather than lifestyle flexing. The system isn't asking how impressive your bank account looks, it's asking whether you can support yourself without becoming a problem. In 2026, that's a rare attitude. For retirees, remote earners, and long-term planners, this keeps the door accessible without turning it into a spectacle. Then there's the bureaucracy, or rather, the lack of theatrics around it. Paraguay's process is straightforward, paperwork heavy in places, but linear. You move from step to step without the constant fear that the rules will change halfway through. It's old-school administration, forms, offices, stamps, and timelines that don't pretend to be user-friendly, but also don't hide surprises in the margins. Another reason Paraguay still feels open is the absence of aggressive digital enforcement. There's no elaborate web of automated checks scanning your every move. Systems talk less to each other. Human discretion still exists. That doesn't mean lawlessness, it means fewer invisible tripwires. Compliance matters, but the system isn't hunting for reasons to disqualify you. Of course, this kind of openness doesn't stay secret forever. Word is spreading, slowly but steadily, especially among people priced out of more fashionable destinations. As more outsiders arrive asking the same questions, attention follows, and attention always changes the math. There's also regional pressure. As neighboring countries tighten standards and harmonize policies, Paraguay will eventually feel the nudge to modernize, standardize, and digitize. Reforms aren't imminent, but they're no longer unthinkable. That's the trade-off. Paraguay's system relies on obscurity, and obscurity is a fragile advantage. Once a place becomes known, it rarely stays easy. And that brings us to the end of this countdown. What this list really shows isn't a collection of perfect destinations. It shows a moment in time. Across the world, relocation hasn't disappeared. It's just become conditional. The easy years are behind us, the forgiving systems are tightening, and the countries that are still accessible today aren't advertising it loudly, because openness has quietly become a liability. Every place we covered shares the same underlying truth. The window is still open, but it's no longer wide, casual, or patient. Timing matters more than hype. Preparation matters more than optimism. And understanding how systems are changing now is far more valuable than chasing yesterday's relocation stories. For some people, this window will be the difference between having options and being boxed into rules they didn't help write. For others, it will close before they realize it was ever there. If this video helped you think more clearly about where the world is headed, not where it used to be, make sure you like the video, subscribe to Mr. Globe TV, and turn on notifications. These shifts aren't slowing down, and staying informed is no longer optional. Share this with someone who's been saying, "I'll figure it out later." Later is getting expensive. Until next time, stay curious, stay prepared, and don't wait for the door to shut before you decide to move.